We're talking about maps that were drawn roughly between the 1300s and the 1700s. In other words, in relatively recent history.
This 5,000-year-old map from Egypt just changed everything we thought we knew about history. For centuries, we were told Christopher Columbus opened up the New World.
Christopher Columbus, who discovered North America, as a brutal white man who committed mass genocide. And that narrative from the left is revisionist history, and it's a lie.
But according to recent archaeological records, ancient Egyptians already had the map of America thousands of years before Columbus was even born. How did these people map America without satellites? And what else have the history books been hiding from us? Join us as we break down the explosive secret behind it all. Discovery of the ancient Egyptian map of America. Christopher Columbus is generally regarded as the first non-native person to step on American soil. Historians describe him as the bold explorer who opened up the New World. And this knowledge has been spread among Americans for many centuries. However, in a shocking twist of fate, archaeologists just discovered an old Egyptian map that will change everything you thought you knew. According to experts who studied the map, it appears to depict the American continent with surprising accuracy. If this map is authentic, it means someone from ancient Egypt knew about America's existence thousands of years before Columbus set sail in 1492. That would suggest that transatlantic voyages, or at least sailing and communication about distant continents, happened far earlier than anyone has assumed. But that is just half the story. Stay with us as we reveal the shocking discoveries from these ancient manuscripts. To fully understand the importance of this discovery, we must first mention the story of the Nagata people. In case you've never heard about it, Nagata is one of the earliest known civilizations in Egypt, flourishing between 4000 and 3000 BCE. This was a time before the pharaohs consolidated their power along the Nile, when small communities were growing along the river and learning to farm and organize themselves. The Nagata people were not just surviving, they were building the foundations of urban life in Egypt. They established early settlements and infrastructure that allowed villages to grow into larger communities. Archaeologists have found evidence of houses, pottery workshops, and storage facilities, and even military weapons that shows the bravery and capacity of the Nagata people.
It shows Ka twice, both left and right, worshipping the archetypal gods of the dead.
Nagata people produced pottery with elaborate designs, intricate jewelry from gold and semi-precious stones, and figurines for their religious beliefs and social roles. To archaeologists, these objects were not just for decoration, they reflected a culture that valued skill, creativity, and artistic expression. Every artifact tells a story about daily life, trade, and the way people understood the world around them. The craftsmanship also points to specialized roles in society. Some people focused on farming, some on building, and others on creating tools or artistic items. That division of labor allowed the society to develop steadily and supported the growth of trade networks. Historians believe that the Nagata people progressively diverted attention towards trade. According to archaeological evidence, Nagata communities exchanged goods with neighboring regions and even distant kingdoms. They traded pottery, stone tools, and precious materials such as turquoise and copper. These trade connections was what eventually became the bedrock of Egyptian civilization.
We just accidentally come across it.
Experts studying these artifacts have gained a new insight into life before the pyramids. Every burial and pottery shard tells us something about their religion, social hierarchy, and rituals. Some tombs contain items related to the afterlife and spirituality, while others reveal everyday objects used for cooking, storing grain, or hunting. The discoveries from the Nagata period don't just challenge our understanding of American history, they challenge everything we've learned about ancient Egypt. But here is the interesting thing. How did the Nagata people find America? And why did archaeologists find a 5,000-year-old American map among their artifacts? If Egyptians had this knowledge of distant lands, it means they possessed advanced navigation and ocean sailing capabilities that modern historians have yet to fully acknowledge. It would also mean the Nagata culture was sophisticated enough to contribute to knowledge that could survive for thousands of years. Every artifact from the Nagata civilization reminds us that these early Egyptians were more than just isolated farmers. They were organized societies with specialized labor, capable of complex artistic expression, and part of networks that reached far beyond their own region. This debate also reminds us that history is not fixed.
Negotiated all the hazards into the next world to arrive here.
The Nagata period and its artifacts opened the door to questioning what we thought we knew about exploration, the spread of knowledge, and the capabilities of early civilizations. As we look at the story of the map alongside the Nagata culture, it becomes clear that early Egypt wasn't just the starting point of dynasties. It was a hub of innovation, geography, exploration, and exchange. If you find this story interesting, what we are about to reveal next will thrill you. So if you thought the mystery of the ancient map was a lot to handle, just wait until we get to the Giza Plateau. This is where the story starts to get really wild. Discovery of the Nubian egg. If you thought the discovery of the ancient American map and the Nagata civilization was shocking, just wait until you hear about the Nubian egg. The Nubian egg is one of the most extraordinary objects ever found in Egypt. It all began in the year 1907 when a British archaeologist named Cecil Mallaby Firth was excavating a cemetery in the southern reaches of Egypt. Mallaby was working in a region known as Middle Nubia, specifically at a site called Cemetery 102. Among the various items buried with the early settlers of the Nile Valley, he found something that would eventually puzzle the entire scientific community. It was a decorated ostrich eggshell, now popularly known as the Nubian egg. This artifact is incredibly old, with experts estimating it dates back to approximately 7,000 years ago. To put that in perspective, this egg was crafted long before the Great Pyramid of Giza was even a thought in the minds of the pharaohs. The Nubian egg is actually an ostrich eggshell, but it isn't plain. It is covered in beautiful carvings and patterns that immediately caught the attention of archaeologists from all over the world. One of the most noticeable parts of the egg is a set of 3 triangular shapes carved on opposite sides. Each of these triangles has a series of horizontal lines inside, carved with a level of precision that suggests the artist had a very clear idea of what they were drawing. The lines are evenly spaced and perfectly aligned. It gives the impression that they weren't just meant to be a decoration, but were actually meant to convey a specific message. Beside the triangles runs a long, curved line shaped like a snake. On the other side of the egg, there is a large, rounded shape, a globule that stands out against the linear patterns. This combination of triangles, lines, and rounded shapes has puzzled archaeologists and historians for decades. According to some archaeologists, the 3 triangles are simply a representation of mountains, which were a common sight for people living along the Nile. However, others believe that the shapes look remarkably like the famous pyramids of the Giza Plateau. If these carvings truly represent the pyramids, then the archaeological community might have made a terrible mistake about dates. You see, the pyramids of Giza are officially dated to around 4,500 years ago, yet this egg is 7,000 years old. This would mean the images were carved 2,500 years before the pyramids were even built. But that is not all. 7,000 years ago, the Nile Valley was already a thriving region with small communities. But the ability to produce an object with such complex design indicates a level of craftsmanship that was extraordinary for the time. Now here's something really interesting. To get those lines so straight and deep on a curved surface like an ostrich egg is not an easy feat. To put that into perspective today, even with all our tech experts, they would probably reach for a high-powered laser or a precision industrial cutting machine. They will also need chemical etching to get the depth perfect in a controlled laboratory environment to make sure the shell didn't just shatter into a million pieces under the pressure. It would take a specialized technician with years of training to pull this off without a single slip-up. But 7,000 years ago, they didn't have any of that. These artists were likely sitting in the sand using nothing but sharpened stone tools or basic copper bits. Think about the level of focus that takes. One wrong move, one tiny crack, and weeks of work are gone. This tells us the Nagata people weren't just getting by or hunting for their next meal. They were masters of their craft. They had the time, the tools, and a level of patience that matches anything we see in modern engineering. It shows a society that valued perfection and had the specialized skills to achieve it long before the first pyramid was ever built. Don't forget the spot where Mallaby found the egg. In these ancient burial sites, people didn't just throw things into a grave. They chose specific items to go with the dead into the afterlife. Burying a decorated egg like this shows it wasn't just a kitchen tool. It had a deep spiritual meaning. It was something sacred. The patterns on the shell weren't there for fashion. They were likely a way to store information, tell a story, or pass down knowledge that the community held dear. When you look at the mix of high-level art and these mysterious symbols, it's easy to see why the egg is at the center of global interest. It makes us wonder exactly how much these early Egyptians knew about their world, and maybe even what lay beyond it. That isn't all, though. That snake-like line is another part that really grabs people's attention. In ancient Egypt, snakes usually stood for life, fertility, or protection. But on this egg, the way it winds around the triangles shows something much deeper. Some researchers believe that it is actually a map of a river or a specific pathway. Others believe it has a bigger meaning. Whatever the artist intended, it proves this wasn't just a decoration. It was a message from the ancient world. Then there's that large, rounded shape, also called the globule. Experts can't say exactly what it is. Could it be a lake, a moon or planet, or maybe a symbol for something we haven't even thought of yet? Its mystery is exactly why the egg is so famous and so controversial. Every time experts take a fresh look at it, they end up with more questions than answers about what the artist was trying to tell us. That's why the Nubian egg is still one of the most controversial artifacts in all of Egyptian archaeology. The exact meaning of these carvings is still a mystery, but one thing is clear. This egg is like a window into the minds of people who lived 7,000 years ago. It shows us a group of people who had incredible skill, a massive imagination, and a curiosity that still keeps us guessing today. Well, that's not all about the Nubian egg. Stay with us as we continue to reveal secrets that challenge everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. Questions about the accuracy of historical records. The Nubian egg story directly contradicts the accuracy of what historians had told us for decades. Some researchers look at those 3 triangles on the egg, and they don't see mountains at all. All they see are the 3 great pyramids of Giza. Some even argue that these carvings represent the pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Now, if that's true, we have a massive problem. This egg is 7,000 years old, but the history books say those pyramids weren't built until about 4,500 years ago.
And it's about 4,500 years old, so like Napoleon would say.
That is a gap of 2,500 years. It would mean the pyramids were already sitting there, ancient and weathered, while the rest of the world was still figuring out basic stone tools. To get actual dates of historical artifacts, archaeologists usually use carbon-14 dating, but here's the thing, you can't date a rock with carbon. Carbon dating only works on things that were once alive, like wood, bone, or seeds. So if a scientist finds a piece of charcoal in the mortar between the stones, they date the charcoal and assume the pyramid was built at the same time. But not everyone agrees with this approach. For instance, the charcoal could have been left there during a later repair, or it could be much older than the building itself. Because of this, the actual age of these massive stone monuments is still up for grabs. Then we have the story of Colonel Howard Vyse, a British officer who went into the Great Pyramid in 1837. He didn't have a gentle touch. He used gunpowder to blast his way into the hidden chambers. Inside those chambers, he found red painted marks on the stones known as quarry marks. These marks included the name of Pharaoh Khufu. Since that discovery, historians have used those paintings as the ultimate proof that Khufu built the Great Pyramid. But over the years, some researchers have started to disagree. Some believe that the marks were misinterpreted or forged. Some people also believe that Vyse was so desperate for a major discovery that he might have added the name himself. If those marks aren't real, the main evidence connecting Khufu to the pyramid falls apart. But that's not all. This brings us to the Great Sphinx, which sits right next to the pyramids. For a long time, we were told it was built around the same time as the pyramids, but the rocks tell a much different story. Geologists have studied the walls around the Sphinx and found deep vertical erosion. This isn't the kind of wear and tear you get from wind and sand. Wind erosion is horizontal and smooth. This vertical scarring is the result of thousands of gallons of water pouring down over the stone. This is a huge detail because the Sahara Desert has been bone dry for thousands of years. For the Sphinx to have that much water damage, it had to be standing during a time when Egypt had heavy, tropical rainfall. That kind of weather hasn't been seen in that region since before the Sahara even formed. Think about the level of skill it takes to build something that lasts that long. Even today, if we wanted to build the Great Pyramid with that kind of precision, we would need a massive army of laborers and the most advanced technology on the planet. We would need laser-guided cutting tools and giant cranes that can lift 70-ton blocks of granite hundreds of feet into the air. We would need architects who understand the movement of the stars and the math of the Earth's curve. Yet we are told that people with copper saws and wooden rollers did this 4,000 years ago. If the Nubian egg is right, and those pyramids were already there 7,000 years ago, it means a civilization existed that was far more advanced than anything we've been told. It's not just about the size of the buildings, it's about the knowledge they held. The people who made the Nubian egg weren't just guessing. They were recording what they saw. If they were drawing the pyramids on an ostrich egg 7,000 years ago, they were the keepers of secrets that we are still trying to find today. When you look at the Sphinx erosion and the dating issues together, you start to see why this is so controversial. It's not just a debate over a few hundred years. It's a debate over the entire history of human progress. If the Sphinx was carved when the Sahara was a green, rainy forest, we are talking about a timeline that goes back 10,000 years or more. This would mean that while the rest of humanity was supposed to be living in caves, someone in Egypt was engineering the largest monuments the world has ever seen. The Nubian egg is just one more piece of evidence that proves we have it all wrong. It acts as a bridge between the world we think we know and a prehistoric world of high technology and deep wisdom. Every time a researcher finds a new pottery shard or a decorated tomb from the Nagata period, it adds to this mystery. These early Egyptians were trading across continents. They were sharing ideas, materials, and maybe even maps of lands that wouldn't be discovered for another few thousand years. The precision of their art and the complexity of their burials show a society that valued knowledge above all else. Forget everything we've said so far. The most important question now is, what else did the ancient Egyptians know? How much more did they accomplish that has been lost to time? The more we dig, the more it seems like we are just scratching the surface of a story that is much bigger than any of us imagine. And that is where things get even more interesting, because the next part of the story will completely change everything. The mysterious map in the ancient city of Nekhen. This story now takes us to the ancient city of Nekhen, also known as Hierakonpolis. In ancient times, Nekhen served as a religious and political hub long before the first pharaoh ever wore a crown. While digging through the remains of this ancient city, archaeologists stumbled upon something that shocked everyone. They found paintings on the walls that do not look like the usual drawings of hunting or farming. Instead, these images appear to show a massive landscape. When you look at the shapes, they do not look like random drawings. The most shocking part of these paintings is that one bears a striking resemblance to the American continent. To make things even more interesting, the artwork also includes features from the Old World that we know for sure the Egyptians visited. You can see the winding path of the Nile River and the Mediterranean Sea. The geographical accuracy of these paintings is what really terrified the researchers. It forces us to ask how an artist living thousands of years ago could have obtained such specific knowledge of the entire planet. To achieve this kind of mapping today, we would need high-altitude aircraft or satellites equipped with precision imaging sensors. We would use GPS data and complex coordinates to ensure every coastline is in the right spot. Yet here we are looking at a wall in a city that flourished over 5,000 years ago, showing the exact map of our modern world. This level of detail suggests that the people of Nekhen were not just looking at their own backyard. They were looking at the horizon and wondering what lay beyond the great oceans. One popular belief for this is that the early Egyptians traveled across the oceans. They were brave enough to sail across the Atlantic Ocean and make contact with distant cultures long before anyone else. If they did not sail there themselves, another possibility is that this knowledge was gathered through massive trade networks. We already know the Nagata and the people of Nekhen were master traders, exchanging goods like gold, obsidian, and cedar with regions far beyond their borders. Perhaps the information about the shape of the Americas was passed down through travelers and merchants who had reached the edges of the known world and returned with stories of a great land across the water. This discovery in Nekhen challenges the long-standing assumption that Christopher Columbus or even the Vikings were the first non-native people to reach the Americas. It suggests that the ancient world was not a collection of isolated villages, but a global network of information and discovery. If these paintings are truly maps of the world, it means the early Egyptians understood global geography that was thousands of years ahead of its time. It implies they had the navigation skills, the record-keeping, and the curiosity to map out the Earth while other civilizations were just starting to build permanent homes. The city of Nekhen itself was a place of high status, where the elite gathered to share knowledge and power. Finding a map of this scale in such a significant location tells us that geography was likely a closely guarded secret of the ruling class. Every time a new researcher looks at these walls, they find more evidence of a civilization that was far more advanced than we ever imagined. Thank you for staying with us. Did the ancient Egyptians find America before Christopher Columbus? Tell us what you think in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the video below to watch it.